Okay, so imagine this. It's 1774, and there's this secret kind of clandestine meeting where leaders from 12 totally separate territories get together.
And most of these guys are strangers to each other. They're often rivals.
Exactly. And for the very first time, they decide to stop acting like separate colonies and start acting like one unified country.
This was the first Continental Congress. And its existence, I mean, it just fundamentally changed everything about American political power.
What's so amazing is that the urgency of the situation just wiped away more than 100 years of local squabbles.
This was not a party. This was a high-stakes emergency meeting. It took place in Philadelphia, and they were very careful about where they met.
Right, not the official state house.
No way. They chose Carpenters Hall, which was a private building.
Okay.
They needed their talks to be private, safe, away from the royal governor who was literally operating right across the street.
And the mission was just massive.
It was huge. They had to come up with a unified plan to push back against what they saw as King George's, well, tyrannical overreach.
Okay, so let's get into that. What was it that actually forced these powerful men, many of whom were, deeply British in their own way, to risk everything?
To travel for weeks just to conspire against their own king.
Yeah. What was the catalyst? What put them all in that pressure cooker?
Well, the immediate cause was a series of laws that the colonists immediately called the Intolerable Acts.
Britain didn't call them that, of course.
No, they called them the Coercive Acts. And they weren't just general policy. They were designed as targeted, almost military-grade punishment.
And the target was Massachusetts, right? Specifically after the Boston Tea Party.
Exactly. That was a huge destruction of private property, and Britain was furious. The Intolerable Acts were meant to break the spirit and the economy of that one colony.
And the punishment was real. It wasn't just symbolic.
Oh, it was crippling. One of the laws, the Boston Port Act, just completely closed the port of Boston.
Which was vital.
It was everything. So no food, no supplies, no business. It effectively strangled the city's entire economy.
So that's a massive economic hit. But it wasn't just about money. Another law, the Quartering Act, made it really personal.
It did. That law basically let British commanders force their soldiers to live in colonist private homes.
Without permission.
Without permission, without paying. And you have to understand, for them, this was a huge violation of their rights as Englishmen. It went against everything they believed in about standing armies in peacetime.
Okay, so I get why Massachusetts is freaking out. But why did leaders from, say, Virginia or South Carolina suddenly think this was their problem too?
And that's the key question. Leaders in the other colonies saw these laws not as a one-off punishment, but as a template.
A blueprint.
A blueprint, exactly. If the king could just shut down Boston's economy and take away property rights there, what was stopping him from doing the same to Philadelphia or Charleston next?
So it was a domino effect.
They believed that if they didn't stand up for Massachusetts right then, they'd be next on the chopping block. So those acts, they were the spark that turned 12 separate places into one alliance.
And that transition, going from just, local interests to a shared identity, that might be the biggest thing to come out of this Congress.
It really is. I mean, before 1774, it's easy to forget how separate these colonies actually were.
They didn't even like each other most of the time.
Not at all.
Huh.
They had different money, different religions, Puritans up north, Anglicans in the south. Their local governments had been doing their own thing for over 100 years.
A person from Virginia would have called themselves a Virginian first.
And a subject to the king second. The whole idea of being an American just wasn't really there yet.
But the Congress shoves them all into a room together and forces them to find some common ground.
And that's where the idea of being American really starts to take shape. You get that incredible moment with Patrick Henry.
Right. He stands up in front of all these different delegates and says,
He says he's no longer a Virginian, but an American. I mean, that's a seismic shift in thinking. It's the foundation for everything that comes later.
But, that unity wasn't perfect, was it? It was a bit more complicated.
Much more complicated. We always say 13 colonies, but only 12 of them actually sent people to this first Congress.
Right. Georgia stayed home. Why was that?
Well, Georgia had a very different and very dangerous reality. They were right on the frontier with powerful Native American nations like the Creek and the Cherokee.
So they needed protection.
They were completely dependent on the British military to protect them from raids. Their leaders were terrified that if they joined this rebellious meeting, the king would just pull his troops out and leave them defenseless.
So it wasn't that they didn't care about the rights. It was just...
It was sheer necessity. It just shows you how fragile this new unity really was.
That makes the whole thing even more amazing. So let's talk about the people. Who actually showed up?
56 delegates in total. And this was like the colonial all-star team.
You had George Washington.
George Washington for his military reputation,
Mm.
John Adams for his legal mind, John Jay. Most were elite, educated men lawyers, rich merchants, big plantation owners.
And they were chosen because they were smart, but also because they were brave.
Definitely. And you put 56 smart, opinionated guys in a room,
Yeah.
you're not going to get instant agreement.
I can't imagine. So what were the big arguments about?
The main split was between the moderates and the radicals. The moderates, like Joseph Galloway from Pennsylvania, were still hoping to fix things with Britain.
They wanted to reconcile.
Right. Galloway even proposed a kind of plan of union, which would have created an American parliament that was still under the king.
And the radicals.
People like John Adams, they were convinced it was too late for that. They saw what the king was doing as a total betrayal and were ready for much more aggressive action.
So how did they get past all that arguing? How did they actually come up with a plan?
This is where their organizational skills really shine. To speed things up, they set up specialized committees.
Ah, so divide and conquer.
Exactly. Instead of having all 56 of them debate every single point, they'd have a small group work on drafting the petition, another on the economic stuff, another on military readiness.
That's smart. It builds trust.
It really does. And that structure was almost as revolutionary as the ideas they were debating.
So once they're organized, what was the plan? What was their big move that was strong, but, not quite war?
Their first and most powerful weapon was economic. They decided to launch a massive, coordinated boycott of all British goods.
And they needed a way to make sure people actually did it?
Oh, yeah. This wasn't just a friendly suggestion. They created something called the Continental Association to enforce it.
And what was that
It
exactly?
was basically a whole new administrative system.
Yeah.
The association ordered every town and county to elect its own local committee.
Committees of safety or inspection?
Right, and their one job was to watch the ports and shops
Yeah.
and make sure nobody was buying or selling British stuff.
So these committees were acting like a shadow government.
They absolutely were. They had huge local power. If a merchant broke the boycott, the committee would publish their name in the newspaper.
Ah, public shaming.
It was incredibly effective. You could be ostracized, lose your business, or worse. It was a grassroots system that turned everyone into a participant.
And this boycott meant everyone had to sacrifice something? This is where ordinary people, especially women, became really important.
No doubt. The whole thing depended on personal commitment. If you couldn't buy British cloth anymore, women had to spin their own yarn and weave their own fabric at home.
Homespun patriotism.
That's it. Turning a household chore into a powerful political act. It was designed to inflict maximum financial pain on British merchants.
So they had the economic warfare, but they also put together a formal document, a statement of their rights.
Yes, the Declaration of Rights and Grievances. And they were very careful with the wording. It listed specific problems and demanded specific rights.
So what were the non-negotiables? What were the big things they demanded?
Two things really stood out. First, that old principle. No taxation without representation. They insisted no money could be taken from them unless their own elected representatives approved it.
And second,
They demanded the rights. The king had just taken away, like the right to a trial by a jury of their peers and the right to assemble peacefully.
and they sent this straight to King George III.
They did. And even with everything going on, they wrote it in a firm but respectful way. They were still giving him a chance to back down and solve the problem peacefully. The door wasn't totally closed.
But they knew he might just ignore it. So what was the backup plan?
This was the biggest step of all. They advised every colony to start organizing local militias and stockpiling weapons and supplies.
So they were getting ready for a fight.
That's the moment they shift from protest to preparing for war. And a militia back then was just ordinary citizens, farmers, doctors, shopkeepers training to fight the most powerful army in the world.
And they made a promise to each other.
A crucial one.
Yeah.
They agreed that if Britain didn't respond positively by the spring, they would all meet again in May of 1775.
That must have given people a lot of security.
It did. It showed everyone that their leaders had a long-term plan and weren't just going to give up. It institutionalized the revolution.
And news of all this, especially the boycott, it just spread everywhere.
Like wildfire. It gave every single person, every farmer and shopkeeper, a real way to be part of the protest every single day.
So it wasn't just something happening far away in Philadelphia.
Not at all. Every time you refused to buy British tea, you were affirming this new shared American identity. It made the whole thing real for everyone.
So the Congress wraps up its work on October 26, 1774. They have a clear plan.
Economic pressure, formal demands, and military preparation. They'd done everything they could short of declaring war.
And the king.
He got the petition, but he basically ignored it. He saw the whole Congress as an illegal, treasonous meeting, and his response is what led directly to the war starting the next year.
But the unity they built in that hall?
It turned out to be the foundation they absolutely needed to survive what was coming.
So the First Continental Congress really did it. It turned 12 separate bickering territories into an organized group ready to stand together for an idea.
And that ability to put aside all those local differences for a common cause, that was the crucial first step toward becoming the United States.
You know, it's fascinating to think about the power of an organization created in secret that becomes strong enough to basically replace the legal government just through popular will. Makes you wonder what other organizations today function as a kind of shadow power structure. Something to think about. Good luck with your studies.